We are live. If you are having challenges with your clients or your customers, you probably have some clients that get you very stressed, get you thinking, I need to fire them. Or you might have clients who are like, if you see their email popping up or a phone call coming in from them, you get really anxious or stressed, then you want to listen in to our chat for today. And please share this with other business owners, entrepreneurs, or CEOs, because I'm sure at some time or the other, we all have handled difficult clients or customers. And we are diving in today in strategies that will help you to work out these situations with clients that you find difficult, customers that are really challenging to handle and to relate to as well. If it is the first time you are joining me live, I am Kersha Campbell, and I do help those business owners who struggle with understanding what's happening in their business in terms of their financial numbers. Sometimes you're not sure what's happening. It could be a struggle with cash flow. I dive into so many issues when it comes to your business. I do have today an amazing guest, Leah Fink from All Thrive. She has a wealth of experience when it comes to handling relationships, emotions, difficult clients and customers. So she will be sharing with us today actionable and practical strategies that will definitely help you and maybe your team as well in handling these situations. So Leah, thank you so much for agreed, for today and being so generous with sharing, willing to share your expertise and so much more with us for the next few minutes.
I really appreciate being here with you, Kirsha. I love the work you
Yes.
do, and I'm super happy to be able to talk with everyone today.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'm first going to start off with an experience I had while I was in corporate. One of my mentors, like he shared an experience. He was like, this lady, she like, it was a husband and wife situation, and she kept talking to her husband, talking, and she was getting so frustrated. He was just not responding, and eventually they went to the doctor and they realized he was having difficulty hearing, right? So it was like she was here thinking all this time he's just been so difficult and you know hard to relate to, when in reality he was just not hearing properly. So I first want to set the tone to ask you to expound a little bit on what are some situations that you would consider difficult. I know it's going to be different for everybody, but just some key things that if this is happening, this could really be a difficult client or customer that you do have.
Yeah. Wow, that's a good question. I love your example because really a lot of my work is about figuring out what maybe that hearing problem is. Because, like you said, it wasn't an intentional thing. And I think when I think about difficult clients, I think a lot about, is the problem actually in the person, or is the problem in the relationship and kind of the space between you? And I'm not going to lie, there are difficult clients. I'm not against firing clients. There is definitely a point when a client is not serving you, you guys aren't a match. It's just not the time to work together. And that's great. Please hold that boundary. And when I think about difficult clients in this context, I was thinking about people that we don't mesh with. And maybe it feels like that husband and wife where you're not quite hearing them or they're not quite hearing you. And that's the piece that I think is really a space you can work with, instead of just being like, oh, these people don't get it. They don't understand. They don't care about my product. They might care a lot. And so you and we started this conversation because I was talking about some personality types.
Yeah.
And, that was really, to me, a place where I found a lot of space to work with people that I thought used to be hard to work with. And when I started understanding more about personality types, I realized they weren't actually that hard to work with. They weren't trying to be belligerent. They weren't trying to be mean. So that was a bit of what I wanted to talk about today. So the personality typology I use is called True Colors. And you might have used something like Myers-Briggs before. You might have used DISC. I think they're all great. And I'll use the context, obviously, that I like to talk about. So I think what happens with different personality types, though, is we all have a different way of seeing things. So if I were to say 4 main personality types, you've got your logical, analytical people. So if you ever started a conversation with a client and the first thing they asked you for was information, or the first thing they started sharing with you was information, like very factual, laid out, structured information, there's probably a good chance that's a really high personality type for them. And the thing is, a lot of other personality types can experience these people as cold, as non-emotional, like they don't care, like they don't want to connect. And
Yeah.
that might not be the truth, right? Like this is that kind of situation. What are you hearing, or what's the actual hearing problem? You know, you have another personality type, which is your warm, emotional person. So when you start a conversation with them, they might start asking you about your family and how you're doing. They're going to use a lot of those, you know, caring, emotive words. Yeah. And see, Kirsha, I suspect that's a higher one for you, because when we talk, you're really relational, right? And so if you say, is this really relational, meet this client who seems really cold, is that a bad client for you? Right? So it's something to consider. You've got a personality type that's very organized and structured. So they like traditional ways of doing things. They like really laid out, planned, prepared things. And so if someone starts by maybe even talking about what your schedule is for the meeting that you're having, if they're from maybe a field that's very structured, like an accountant or like a planner organizer, there's a good chance that they're like that. And then you have your entrepreneurial, spontaneous people. So usually big energy, big ideas. They might go from topic to topic really, really quickly, and you're kind of brought along for the ride. So once again, you have these points though. So Kirsha, as you know, if you're thinking from a really emotional place, not in a bad way, but you care about people, and so you really want to help your client. What would you do if a client who's either very structured or very logical, how would you interact with them when they came to you?
Well, I did have a client like that. They were more not into the small talk and the chit chat. And well, initially I thought they were just, probably just wanted to get to the details, just find out what was happening. And then after relating for a while, I realized that was just how they were, and that was okay. And I think it's a great point you've raised, because a part of my culture is that growing up is that there's not a lot of small talk. So it's like, just get to the point. This is what's happening. So being in Canada, it was a transition for me with, talking and I had to learn that. So I can definitely really relate to times where it's just heading straight to the small talk, and then, or another time where it's just, you're not into that. You just want to dive into the facts. So I think that's a very good distinction to really look out for. How does the client relate to you from that initial point when you're having those initial conversations, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and how quick can you pick it up? I mean, I love that you mentioned the cultural piece too, which I don't think we have time to get into today, but is also really important, right? Like, you don't know what the background of your client's going to be, but it sounds like you were pretty quickly able to identify, like, oh, this person's not small talking with me. Maybe I'm going to try a different approach. And that's the really important piece, right? Is that you shifted your way of being to try to meet them because they were your client and you wanted to make them happy. Yeah.
So the other question I have though, so at that initial, because usually you don't realize if your client is difficult or appears to be difficult. Usually in the beginning there are certain signs, but most times it's as you get deeper and deeper into the relationship that you realize, okay, this is not meshing well. So going through that process, at the beginning, what are some of the signs you can look out for? You mentioned a few, but how do you dive into connecting with these personalities? What are some of the things you would suggest that you're having preliminary discussions? You might notice this person is a bit standoffish, or this person is wanting a lot more details than you are used to giving, things like that. What are some of the approaches with the different color types you just mentioned?
Yeah. No, that's exactly what you need to know, isn't it? So you're able to approach them, right?
Yeah.
So what you want to do, actually, what I would recommend to absolutely everyone, if you work with clients or even people in your life, is actually write down your pitch, whatever you would be meeting clients, and have a plan laid out for each of these types. because
Yeah.
the actual reading of someone might not take too long. Even if it's not perfect right away, you should be able to, if you start learning this stuff within first 30 seconds of chatting with them, have a good idea. But if you haven't made that plan, like you said, if they ask for information and you don't have that ready, you might be kind of shooting yourself in the foot, right? That you're not going to be prepared. So we'll go through the same order. So those analytical people, whatever you are selling, you have facts about it. Those facts might be analytics about how well it's worked for other people. They might be detailed breakdown of what the program looks like. You want to have that information available, so when they start that process with you, you're able to say, oh, well, if the first thing you want is information, let's go through the information. For the people who are really emotional, connection centered, so relationship, they're going to talk about relationship first. And one of the best ways to approach them and make them, or kind of get them on your corner, is to talk about how your process or your service will impact them and their family. Right. Okay. So instead of just laying out the facts of, here's what is happening, you can actually say, well, why is this important to you? Like, is it so you're saving money for your family? Right? How important is this business to you? Tell me about your experience with this business. They want to know that you're interested in them as a person. And so whatever you can relate your business to that way is going to help them. For the really structured people, it's going to be same thing, a little bit more of an approach of laid out, right? If you can show that you are organized in your approach, whatever that looks like, that's really going to help them trust you, that you know what you're doing, that you have a series of steps that they will be able to follow and that you will be able to follow to get the result you're talking about. And then the spontaneous, adventurous, entrepreneurial people, don't bog it down too much. If you start with them with that information, they're going to be bored out of their minds, right? So you actually join them, and they're probably going to have some high energy, join them in their energy, tell them, like, run through things really nice and quick, and keep it fast paced and not boring. And that'll create that connection for you.
Okay, great, thanks. Another question I have is we have spoke about difficult customers, but I do know that what's difficult to me might be a different difficult for somebody else. Is there a line or demarcation with being difficult versus being abusive? Right?
Yes.
How do we really draw the line? Because I know, like you mentioned earlier, sometimes you really have to part ways, fire a client, or say this is not going to work. So what are in terms of the colors to, how can that help us to decide or determine, this is beyond a difficult situation. It's more than us connecting. It's diving over into now it's being abusive as well. Because we do have abusive clients.
Oh. And that's really, really important, like I said, to know that. I'm not encouraging anyone to stay in a bad situation that way. Yeah. I would say there's actually two parts to that. So one part is you've got to realize each of those colors experiences and expresses stress differently. So if it's a point of, maybe you met this client and they seem pretty good and you're like, okay, I can relate to them enough that we're having a good relationship. And then the next time they come back, they're not in that space anymore. I was speaking with someone the other day who was doing like renovation and home design. And she said, she had a client who started out really lovely guy. And as the project started going a little bit sideways, he was a logical analytical planner. And as the project went a little bit sideways, he started becoming very controlling. And he got to the point that you're talking about, that I would say he was almost abusive, because he was, at the site every day and overlooking everything and telling they're doing their job wrong. And what had happened was the stress from this situation, which he felt he couldn't control, was causing this stress reaction in that color. And so you have two choices there. One is, if you can meet them in a place that de-stresses them for that color, then you might actually help them get past that point where they're not doing a behavior anymore that is worrisome. So for that guy, if there was a way, if you met him in a place of, what can we control? Can I explain something further to you? That might have de-stressed him, and then the behavior goes away. For those logical analytical people, once again, it's answering the whys, giving them information, right? As much as you can provide that way, that's probably going to de-stress them. For planners, you're going to give them a sense of control, like they know what's going to happen. I know this can be hard. Obviously, you might not be able to do all these things immediately. For the relational people, listening to their challenges and what they're having and validating their experience. And then for the spontaneous, adventurous, entrepreneurial people, helping them see the big picture can be really good. Because each of those groups is going to look different in stress, and then they're going to react different or need different support to get out of it. I think the place where that crosses over the border that you're talking about is when they don't respond to what you're doing. And so if you have, I would say, be very clear about your boundaries in your business, whatever that is. So, if you're at a call center, for example, I hope they all have very firm boundaries that when someone starts swearing at them on the phone, they have the
Yeah.
option to hang up, right? Like that's a
Yeah,
pretty clear boundary that I hope they have. You don't want that work situation for anyone.
exactly.
If you had a client who's suddenly, doing the same to you, or, has been saying horrible things about you in email, if you know that your boundary is, I will only take this behavior, then you know when to say, actually, this is done. This can also be a little bit based on your skillfulness, because if you've never done anything on these personality types before, if you maybe feel a little bit less confident in your relationships with people, that might be a point where you call it a little bit sooner because you don't know how to handle the situation. And that's
Okay.
totally fine. But I think having a really clear idea of what's considered a boundary cross for you, what's considered that negative behavior, is super important.
Okay, great. And I do know that relating differs for everybody, especially now where we have a lot of relationships are now online. How does that impact the connection? Like, we would still be using the colors to assess, but how much more difficult is it when we are online versus not in person? Sometimes it's just a phone call. Would you say that we can detect these colors easier in person, or are there some things, times you're on the phone, we can pick something up, or by an email or a text, or is it better to really be in person? Or when it's not in person, how can we really detect these situations if it's just by email, we're corresponding, or phone or text? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, first of all, in person for any relational stuff is generally going to be your best bet. It really just
Yeah.
gives you the most information. You can see the most, you can hear the most.
Yeah.
Your Zooms or your video platforms actually do still give you a fair amount of information. I would say you're pretty accurately able to get a read. Phone starts getting a little more difficult because you can't see someone's face. You can't see if they look
Yeah.
excited about your question or if they're kind of faking and, just saying the words.
Yeah.
But I still think you can do it. There's, two examples I would say for phone and email is when you're reading an email and someone starts it with a, hello, how was your weekend? I hope your year's been going well. A lot of those phrases, they're probably either relational or maybe that traditional, right? They like
Oh,
kind of
okay.
having a lead into your email that's talking a little bit more. If they are maybe a bit more of that structured or analytical, they might have a very, hello, very go right to the topic, right? And talk about it. And same thing, very brief ending. Or they might not, on LinkedIn, when I meet new people, I try to structure my messages the way they do. So is it like, hello, name, how was your weekend? It's lovely to see you, da da da. Then you copy that. Or if it says, let's meet at this time, right?
Yeah.
You're actually respecting them. If they're like being concise, then you're respecting them by being concise and meeting them where they're at. And then that goes the same for the phone. I worked with a lady and I taught True Colors at an organization I was at, and one of the ladies was same thing, this high logical analytical, and she never said goodbye on phone conversations because you
Okay.
knew the conversation was done. That just wasted time. So she was trying to respect everyone's time. So she'd go, okay, click. And half
Yeah.
the people at the office went, I hate it when you do that, right? Because for them, it
Yeah.
was rude. It was just relational. And,
Yeah.
her realizing that she was able to change that behavior. So really, it's just looking for those cues. What kinds of things are people doing and saying, even in small amounts, that are talking to their values, really, that are talking to what they care about? And I think especially with all of this, always assuming, like being generous in your assumption, being generous in the assumption no one's actively trying to hurt you, especially when you're starting out a relationship. Everyone's trying to be there the best that they can. And that's part of the reason we as the business people have to meet them where they're at, is because they're doing their best and we can do even better to help them out.
Okay, great. So my last question is, if there's a client, a business owner, entrepreneur, CEO listening onto us, they think they're in a difficult situation. They have a few difficult clients or customers. What should they do before they really sever that relationship? If they're thinking that I'm done with this, what would you say they should do before they really cut ties, or what should they do to give it a try again and see?
Yeah. Well, I do think there's a couple options. I think, taking the time to think about it's really important. Try not to make it just a a quick decision of, well, I don't like them anymore, they're gone. Think
Yeah.
about what the problem is. Is it this conflict maybe in relationship? This is the kind of world I live in. This is the stuff I love to do. So for example, I am running a True Colors workshop on March 6th from 10 to 3 Mountain Standard Time. So that's what's that? 12
That's
to
12,
5 in
yeah.
Eastern Time.
Yeah.
And these are all the kinds of things we're going to focus on. So it's helping people, understand their own way of being, their most natural way of being. Recognizing though that everyone has all of these different traits, just in greater and lesser amounts. We express them in different ways. So like, how do you capitalize on that as a strength to be able to use all of these? And then we do go into stressors, because I think that's such an important piece, is understanding, when client Bob is stressed and he's this personality type, this is how he's going to react. And this is the way I can, de-escalate him and make him a healthy client again. And this is what's going to really set him off, to be honest, right? This is going to make it worse. So talking about all those stressors and then how you can apply them. So that's one of my favorite ways to be able to deal with clients. And, I come from a place naturally where I'm a high analytical, and I work every day, every time I meet clients to really read them and match them where they're at. And it's just made all my relationships so much easier with that. I've got to tell you, it was not my natural state before. So it's been really helpful for me.
Okay, great. So I know this has been just a tip of the iceberg. So what are some ways persons can reach out to you if, even if they want to get more details on the workshop, or even outside of the workshop? What are the best ways to connect with you? Because it's just a tip of the iceberg of the depths we shared. Well, yeah.
No, definitely. I mean, and I love talking with people about this too, even if it's just a quick question. I'll post my info right here on the chat. So that's got my website and my phone number. If people want to book a Calendly, an appointment, and we can actually chat through some of this, I'd really love to talk with them. I, kind of geek out about this stuff. That's my style. And I just, I love being able to help people in these situations. That raising of self-awareness is a big passion of mine.
Okay, great. Thanks. So thank you so much, Leah. I know it's been a wealth of information, and it's been so practical, because I know I like hands-on. I like, okay, this can be done. And, so I'm sure this wealth of information will definitely be helping entrepreneurs, CEOs, and those listening on, business owners. And please, guys, please share this broadcast with others. And, we're all a community, so definitely share, because somebody else might be going through that. It might not be you at this time, but there might be someone else who can use this wealth of information as well. So do reach out to Leah if you have more questions or concerned, anything you're not sure about. She has placed her contact information in the chat. And you can also, is it better to do LinkedIn or Facebook for you, Leah?
LinkedIn's good. Everyone's
LinkedIn.
just LinkedIn here, so yeah.
Okay, so you can find her on LinkedIn, and of course her other details are in the comments, so you will find that. So thank you all for tuning in. Please remember to share this video, and if you do have questions, do reach out to Leah to support you with, the relationships you're having with your clients and your customers, and all those other persons, suppliers too, who you might be connecting with as well. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll be signing off now. So until next time, please remember that it is possible to work through relationships with your clients when they're difficult, but you need the right tools to be able to do that, right? So thank you, guys, and we'll be signing off now. Bye, everyone.